Hi, I'm Jeremy Lund with KiteboardCoach, and today we're going to be discussing kite setup. Now, first thing you want to determine is your wind direction. Today we have a straight onshore breeze, which means the wind is coming directly from sea to land. Alright, so what we want to do, there's both an upwind and a downwind method. I prefer the upwind method, which means that we run the bar and lines into the wind. The advantage of this is that when you're walking the lines out, the wind helps blow the knot in front of you, and that's something that will make more sense when we do it. First thing you want to do, take the bungees off of your bar, and you want to get all 4 lines, or 5 lines if it's a 5-line kite, coming off the bar together. Alright, setting those down. Now it's very important that as you unfurl the lines, that you're keeping the back of the bar facing into the wind, as you don't want the lines coming off the back side. You want them all coming off the front so that it keeps them from getting twisted and tangled. Now it's okay as you walk these out if you have a little slack in there. Once we get to the end, you're going to pull all the slack out. Alright, now once we get to the end, we want to pull all the slack out of the lines so that the lines are nice and straight. And we're setting the bar down with red in left. Alright, now we want to grab our outside lines and our inside lines. We're going to separate all 4 lines at once. You will see a 5th line on this kite. It is actually a flagging line. It's a 4-line bar with a flagging line that runs up one of the center lines. So we want to make sure we get that on the side that it favors. Okay. Stand in the middle of your center lines. Again, outside lines are also being separated. And you want to kind of shake your wrist as you walk this out. This keeps that knot well in front of you. If that knot gets caught up to you, the lines start to bind and they become harder to separate. Now, once you get to the end, it tends to be a few more knots, so you want to be very careful with this, making sure, again, you don't get it all tangled. Sometimes I like to pull the outside lines out first. And we want to set our inside lines about 2 to 3 feet apart. All right. Set one of your outside lines over here. Then the other outside line, we're actually going to take this and we're going to put it about 10 foot out. Sometimes I like to put a little tension here just to make sure they're separating. All right. And it's going to go about 10 foot from center. Then we'll come back and we'll do the other side. Get a little bit of tension on that center line will just help make sure that they're not tangled together. 10 foot out. And you want to be able to visually see that the outside lines are going straight to the bar and the inside lines are going straight to the bar. They're not overlapping each other. If they are, don't guess that they're okay. Go back and walk your lines. The number 1 reason for kiteboarding accidents is actually tangled lines. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and inflate the kite. I want you to go ahead and refer to the other videos about equipment selection to make sure you're pumping up the proper kite for the conditions. Now when it comes to the kite, there's a couple different types of inflation. All right, there's what's known as a 1-pump and a 2-pump. This is a 1-pump kite. So what that means, there's struts that go along the kite and there's a leading edge. A 1-pump system means that the struts and the leading edge are connected by 1 point of inflation. A 2-pump kite means that you have to inflate the struts separately from the leading edge. I prefer a 1-pump system because it gets you on the water a little bit faster. The downside to it is a little bit harder to change out the bladders if you had to, but it's really not that bad, so I still overall definitely prefer a 1-pump system. Now the difference in setup also, with a 2-pump, you would want to start out with one of your wingtips straight into the wind, pump the upwind strut first, and work your way down the kite. With a 1-pump system like this, all you need to do is unfurl the kite, make sure it's nice and open, make sure that the leading edge is straight into the wind. Again, our wind is straight on shore, it's coming this direction, my leading edge is straight into the wind. Alright, every kite pump is going to have a leash. Every kite's going to have a leash attachment point. Some use a little ball like this, some use a little hook. Whatever it is, just make sure it's attached. Now with the pump, you want to make sure there's no sand or water in there. I like to give it a pump or 2. Okay. Next, we have our valve. We want to make sure that we don't have any sand inside the valve. So just kind of blow on that, make sure there's no sand on it. The higher end kites are going to have a screw-in valve like this. Some of the other lower end kites are going to have more of a a valve that looks like something you'd find on a kid's floaty or a little raft or something. I definitely like the screw-in ones. They're a little bit more durable. But when you put them in, you got to be careful of something, and that is not to over-tighten them. So you want it just barely snug, all right? And then once it's inflated, you'll tighten it down the rest of the way. And the reason for that, there's a thin latex inner tube inside of here. And if you're tightening this down really hard every time, each time you do that, it spins that bladder just a tiny bit. And over time, that bladder will eventually tear. So again, barely snug, inflate it, and then you'll tighten it the rest of the way. This particular system from Kiteboarding is very easy. Just plugs in just like that. Give it a little twist. Again, make sure your leash is tight so that you know it's hooked properly and the kite's not going to fly away. Now, once you get a little bit of air pressure in the kite, if you have a situation like this where the kite hasn't unfurled all the way, you really want to make sure you open that up. Okay, each side looks good there. Otherwise, you could get a pinch and your kite could pop. It's unlikely, but it is possible, and that would certainly ruin your session. To make sure the kite's properly inflated, basically, you should be able to flick it and hear a nice loud ping. Okay, so that sounds good. Go ahead and undo the leash, and you want to make sure your cap goes on, and now is when you actually tighten it down all the way. It's still not super tight, as they are plastic threads, but you do want it nice and tight, make sure it's not going to leak. Now, on a one pump system, the struts are going to be connected by some type of valve that you need to close and pinch off. So this is basically just a little hose clamp, and I used to have taken the neoprene off there, and just close that up. Doesn't have to be super tight, but snug. And that's just going to make sure that if you get a leak anywhere in your kite, that the whole kite's not going to go flat. This might give you an opportunity to either sail back in if you notice your kite getting low on air, or at least do a self-rescue to get back in. Another way to check and make sure that your kite's properly inflated is to go ahead and put it on its side, and you're going to bend it, and you want it to spring back quickly on its own. Now, this could be somewhere between 7 to 9 psi. Some pumps do have gauges, but I want you to go ahead and take that gauge off and throw it away. Most of them do not work. You just have to learn what a properly inflated kite feels like. Now, as far as handling the kite, again, leading edge always into the wind. If there's good wind, you can hold it just like this. If you're walking downwind or in a light wind situation like this, you actually want to hold up on the middle strut so you can see where you're going. We're going to bring the kite over, and we want to get the trailing edge of the lines past the trailing edge of the kite. Then we're going to take the kite and we're going to flip it over, landing the center of the leading edge directly over the center lines. So we have our center lines coming underneath, and we have our outside lines going around the kite. All right, now we're going to go ahead and set up the lines. Now, if you notice here, we've got red to red. Okay, our outside line is going around the outside of the kite. We basically want to start with an outside line and work our way across. You don't want to be jumping around the kite. All right, now there's 3 knots here, and those affect the power. So let's talk about how that works for a second. Let's say that my thumb is the leading edge of the kite. Kite's up high flying, okay? We've got our trailing edge, leading edge, so we've got our inside lines and our 2 outside lines. If we make the outside lines tighter, the kite does that. So now more wind is hitting the kite. So that's going to be more power. If we want less power, we let the outside lines out a little bit. That's going to be less power. So now we'll go ahead and talk about how you make that adjustment on the lines. All right, now again we have our 3 knots here. Tighter, more power. Farther away, less power. It even tells you on this brand, Kiteboarding, more power, medium power, less power. We're going to go ahead and set it up in the medium power setting. Now, the knot we want to use is called the lark's head, and if you look at this, it's actually bent a little bit. We always want to go with the bend, not against it, otherwise you're bending it back and forth and it makes it weak over time. And the lark's head is basically a little lasso. Bring it over here. We want to go a few millimeters up from the knot, cinch it down, and then slide it into place, and then tighten it up. And that's the only knot we want to use for kiting. Now we're going to do the inside line. Now the bridle is kind of the monster in the closet, and that's because there's so much more going on here, more attachment points. And what often happens is you'll have a little tangle like this, and people don't notice it always. They hook their kite up anyway. Now you go to launch the kite, and hopefully the person launching it notices, but if they don't, you now have a kite in the air that you don't have good control of. So make sure that you can trace all the lines properly back to the leading edge and that nothing is tangled. Then we're going to go ahead and make our lark's head, again attaching it to the line. If you notice on this one, we made our lark's head on the line attached to the kite. Here we're making our lark's head from the kite, attaching it to the line. That's going to just help keep us from putting the wrong line in the wrong place. Now here we only have one knot to put it on, but some kites may have more knots on the inside lines as well, and that's basically the opposite of the outside line, because now we're affecting the center lines. So center lines, we make those tighter, that pulls the nose down, so that's less power, okay? Whereas on the outside lines, if we made those tighter, that pulled the trailing edge down, and that's more power. So again, make our lark's head knot, a few millimeters up from the knot, cinch it down, and then slide it into place. So now we're going to do the same thing on the rest of the lines, working our way across. Again, making sure the bridle's not tangled. Hook up our center lines. Connected. Go to our other outside line. Again, it's going around the kite, not underneath it. We obviously want to match it with the same side, so that was on the center knot, so we're going to put this on the center knot. Also notice we have gray to gray this time, whereas on the left side it was red to red. Again, a few millimeters up, cinch it down, and slide it into place. This kite is now active and ready to fly. Over time, you'll be able to have this kite out of your car, set up and in the air in less than 10 minutes.